Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of a Trip of a Lifetime podcast with me, Celeste.
Me, Jasmine.
And it's me. I'm back. I'm Loki.
And today we're going to be reviewing The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances two-parter. These episodes released on the 21st and 28th of May 2005, respectively. They were directed by James Hawes and written by Stephen Moffat. It's the first Stephen Moffat episode of the new era. 'Cause, prior to this, he had written a Doctor Who Red Nose Day special called The Curse of Fatal Death, which is you can view for free on YouTube. It's actually very funny and features actors like Hugh Grant, Joanna Lumley, and Richard E. Grant, amongst others, as different versions of the Doctor. Yeah, it was great. A lot of people watched that and were like, this guy should be writing for Doctor Who. And he now is, has done. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So, we've obviously got the introduction of fan favourite character Captain Jack, played
The
by...
most bisexual man in the universe.
Oh, literally. Or yeah, some people think he's on. Some people think he's omni. Some people think he's pan. Some people say he's bi. It's it's arguable either way because those three sexualities overlap a lot. Yeah, so he's the first openly queer character in Doctor Who. I mean, I know obviously the Doctor and the Master have existed prior to this, but they weren't really. They didn't really properly start establishing the fact that they were both queer until the new series. I mean, you could argue they were both queer coded in the classic show, in the way that they dressed and the way that they were quite flamboyant and the way they acted. But and also there were companions in the classic series like Ace, Tegan, and Nyssa, who were all queer coded as well. Like Tegan and Nyssa, according to a Rusty Davies short story for the anniversary of Elizabeth Sladen's death, for Sarah Jane Adventures, canonically made Tegan and Nyssa a couple, so they are together. And then Ace as well, I mean, most famously was very much coded as a lesbian. But this is the first openly, canonically queer character in the show. So I guess we open up in this episode with the Doctor and Rose travelling through the time vortex chasing this spaceship. And there's that thing about mauve being the colour of danger in the rest of the universe, whereas it's red in on Earth. And it's just another comment that the Doctor makes about how Earth is just so disconnected from everything else and how far behind they are. We've also got, as he enters, he's walking towards the bar before he goes on stage, he's talking with Rose and the psychic paper is re-explained to the audience just in case they'd forgotten. But he also, it's the first use of John Smith in the new show. It hadn't been used prior to that in the new series.
Oh, that's cool.
Because when he's on, the last time he used the psychic paper was on Platform 1 in... no, actually, that's a lie. He's used the psychic paper twice. He's used it in the long game, and they just assumed that he was an inspector. And so he was like, here, yeah, I am. And on Platform 1, he introduced himself as the Doctor, whereas here, it says John Smith. Yeah. I mean, he only uses it with Rose, but still, it's just a little nod that Stephen Moffat makes to the classic series that then is carried on by both him and Russell. And, wait, maybe not Chibnall, because I don't think she's ever gone by Jane Smith or anything else. She's just the Doctor.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sure we can... Well, obviously Russell's coming back, so it's definitely going to be used again. There's also some Star Trek references with Spock.
There are so many.
Well, I mean, it's only literally just the use of Spock. I just, yeah.
I have Star Trek references in mine.
A part of me thinks when Jack says, "Oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Spock," to the Doctor, he might be trolling him slightly.
Oh, he absolutely understands.
Because I felt like he'd been travelling here and there even before he'd met them. So I'm assuming even in the 51st century Star Trek would be mentioned because it's such a massive pop culture thing.
Star Trek probably shaped that future. I
Yeah.
feel.
I mean, Star Trek laid the foundation for most sci-fi.
Yeah.
That and Doctor Who, because they started around the same time. It's
Yeah, I
just
think so.
it's just that Star Trek was more prevalent in pop culture because people like to rewatch Star Trek, whereas they didn't rewatch reruns of Classic Who. Like, it didn't fare well in the ratings for some reason. So it's only really when it's in its revival has that got a global following.
This is definitely the only Doctor Who episode that's ever scared me. I don't know why I'm so scared of it, but like Weeping Angels, fine. The Flood, fine. The Empty Children, no.
You're not the only one who feels that way.
It's
I don't
also
think.
my favourite episode. Oh no, my favourite episode is the one I'm most scared of. What do I do?
Well, I guess you're quite a big horror fan though, like
Yeah.
games and stuff. So maybe that's where your love of horror stems from, is the fact that you like
Maybe.
to be scared.
And the fact that it was probably like the original body horror I watched.
Yeah, because body horror normally freaks the hell out of me. Like the gangers, for example. Like, not so much in the episode themselves, but still photos of the gangers. To this day, Jennifer Ganger freaks me out. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've only watched that two-parter twice for a reason. But yeah, for some reason, I think I probably was freaked out initially by mainly Dr. Was it Constantine? Or-
Yeah. And his transformation. Ooh.
Yeah, that probably did freak me out the first time I watched it, but so did the Flood. The Weeping Angels still scare me. The Flood, not so much anymore, I don't think. Yeah, it's very understandable. I mean, again, it's, people were like, oh, Doctor Who's such a kids show. And, if that kind of thing happened today, people would probably be complaining. But that's what I miss from some of the newer series, like Capaldi and Whittaker. They didn't really have many of these episodes.
Yeah. Like my mum used to tell me about when she watched Doctor Who, and she'd always end up hiding behind the sofa because though it was like old era and crappy costumes, she was still absolutely terrified.
Yeah, a lot of people were. I mean, that's why it ran for so long. I mean, sure, it eventually got cancelled in the 80s, but it could have easily have been cancelled about 5, possibly even 10 years earlier than it had done.
Yeah.
I really loved the way they revealed the time period
Yeah.
in the bar, because obviously the Doctor's like, oh, has anyone seen anything fall from the sky recently? And there's this awkward pause, and then people start laughing because they assume that he's actually a stand-up comedian that's just doing a bit, and then they're just laughing,
And then
it's
the
not.
siren goes off, and it's like anything big, loud, goes bang. Damn it.
Yeah. And then you've also got the added hilarity of Rose literally in a Union Jack t-shirt hanging in the Sky Trigger Blitz. Like, that could go wrong at all. Like,
I definitely think the wartime London in Doctor Who is one of like my favourite eras for them to visit.
yeah, because they almost had another wartime World War II episode in season 4 with Donna. It was I think it was almost instead of Fires of Pompeii.
No.
It was supposed to be written by Mark Gatiss, and because it was that, and then there was the James Moran's episode Fires of Pompeii, and Russell was kind of debating between the two because he was like, well, I like the idea of the British Museum and Nazis taking it over or something like that. I can't remember the exact plot line, but he was like, but we also have already done a World War One story with the Empty Child and want to do something different, which is why he picked the Pompeii episode over that.
Back to his idea, they did do a slightly, without spoiling it, sorry, they did do a slightly similar thing in the Pandora Cut Opens two-parter
What do you mean?
with the Daleks.
I thought you were going to say Victory of the Daleks, because that is...
too,
I like Victory.
but in the museum.
Well,
Specifically.
yeah, but there's no Nazis there.
No, but
There are Daleks, which are...
It's
like,
close enough.
yeah, I mean, they
to
are
be
literally
honest.
allegories for Nazis. That's why they were created, but yeah.
there are many jokes in this two-parter special.
Mm.
Well, not special, two-parter, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, for example, who looks at a screwdriver and thinks this could be more Sonic, and then that's by Jack.
I swear River literally makes a similar comment around Pandora era as well, like, about it.
It's like about, you've got a screwdriver, go build a cabinet, and then earlier, after Jack says that, the Doctor says a similar thing to what River says.
Exactly. Well, no, I think Jack says it, whereas like, you could probably assemble something or anything.
But then I always see River and Jack kind of in a way similar because they're kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
They have crossed over quite a bit in Big Finish. I think the two characters do tend to get along. Yeah, I think River and Jack are basically the male and female versions of each other. And I know a lot of people have said that the way that Moffat writes women can be quite similar. Like, a lot of comparisons have been drawn between Missy and River, as well as Clara as well, and and Amy, and how he tends to sexualize female characters quite a bit. Yeah, I'm not saying he hasn't written some pieces of work that can be seen as feminist. Like, he has got some feminist ideas in some of his stories, but at the same time he's also sexualizing them as well. Yeah. It's kind of like, well, you can't do both kind of thing. Whereas, I mean, obviously, the only one he doesn't fetishize is Bill for obvious reasons, because she's a lesbian.
Yeah.
Although that is interesting enough, because you look at Sherlock, and you've got Irene Adler in that, who is a lesbian, but she's sexualized and she's in love with Sherlock. And I think the one thing that a lot of creators seem to miss the point on is the fact that women can be impressed with men without being in love with them. Yeah. I remember seeing that take on Tumblr and going, that is amazing. Anyway, so there are a lot of parallels between Jack and River. There's also quite a few parallels between Jack and the Master as well, arguably. I mean, those two hate each other. It's great.
Honestly, the trio of Dr. Rose and Jack is just absolute chaos.
Oh, God. And
especially next one.
Yeah, even next episode, when you add Mickey in that as well, it's even worse. Like, it's great. But I think Rose and Jack and the Doctor are kind of almost what I wished the fam would have been like, to how they treated them. Because the fam, they never felt like a family. Like, you can see that, they get along, but there's no, small moments where they're all laughing together and they're finishing each other's sentences and, there's no banter. It's just, I don't know. It just feels kind of flat.
Yeah. Although, in the... I don't know how to word this, sorry. The Doctor gets slightly jealous with Jack and Rose at the beginning, or at the beginning of episode 2.
But actually, so Jack gets jealous of the Doctor as well at a certain point, and then also of Rose at certain points. Like, and then you also got that added bit at the end of Doctor Dances, where like the Doctor's dancing, and like the Rose is like, "Oh, I think Jack would like this dance." He's like, "Yeah, but who with?" Just adding that element of the fact that the Doctor is not straight, nor is Jack.
Let him be Polly.
Exactly.
Although, hang on, this isn't relevant again. Sorry, I'm just gonna get all the references out.
Sure.
You have the Father Christmas joke.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I guess you could kind of see it as a joke, but it's almost as if the Doctor kind of is Father Christmas in a way. Yeah.
And then you also have the Pompeii reference.
Yes, yeah, there is. I mean, obviously that's not foreshadowing for Fires of Pompeii, because that was nowhere near being written at the time.
Whenever the empty child is there and like someone is like approaching the child, there's always like that sense of anxiety. Like when Rose was running up, it's like, I know what happens because I've seen the episode. But Rose, stop, just run away,
Totally.
But then at the same time, you feel slightly sorry for the child, even though the child is air quotes soulless. But because no one wants him, everyone's running away from him.
It's not so much that, because I mean the child is essentially, well, the child is a zombie essentially. He's also technically dead, or was dead, and has kind of been brought back to life, but only partially.
Yeah,
but the thing is, the reason why he's constantly saying, "Are you my mummy?" is because the nanogenes are trying to find that source code, the DNA that solves the whole thing in the end. That's why he's saying, "Are you my mummy?" Because he's trying to find his mum so that the nanogenes can fix it and make sure that everything is as it should be.
Yeah.
One thing I really liked at the start, obviously with Nancy, there's that foreshadowing through the whole way through that her brother is actually, not only is her brother the victim and the empty child, but he's also actually her son. That's foreshadowed through the whole thing, quite early on. But also the phone. At the start, the phone ringing on the TARDIS. The Doctor's like, well, it's not a real phone. So somewhere between here and the day of the Doctor, the Doctor connected it up to make it a real phone. And I find that so funny that he's just like, well, we might as well actually use it. Like, you know.
Just like, oh god, I need a phone. Oh right, this one doesn't work.
Despite the fact that he has one in the actual TARDIS itself. But one thing I always, well, not forget, but I kind of, I don't always realise until I start watching the episode, is the fact that all the empty child, or all of like the people with the gas masks that affected all the zombies, if you like, they're connected via a hive mind.
Yeah.
Because, you know, obviously the empty child, Jamie, is the ringleader. He is the commander, as the Doctor says at the end of the episode.
It's very, I definitely like that bit, whereas like they need that commander and then the doors open to show Jamie. It's like, oh, chills.
Yeah.
I really like Nancy.
Yeah.
Like, she's, I think in that season she's one of my favourite kind of one-off characters.
Yeah, side characters. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess she is the one that I really remember. Like, I remember her. I do remember Adam, obviously, because he appears in 2 episodes. I do remember, I can't remember her name, which is not great, but I remember, like, her appearance, the woman from Long Game, the journalist.
I know who you mean.
Not Suki, the other one.
Yeah, I know who you mean. I don't remember.
Yeah, and then I also, I mean, obviously you got Pete and Jackie, but they become bigger characters later on anyway. Well, Jackie's not even a side character; she's a recurring one. And also I remember Van Statten to a certain point.
Yeah.
But no, Nancy, she is a fully fleshed out character, I think.
Yeah, I definitely like, especially with the way she interacts with the Doctor. I do like that dynamic, and I'm kind of sad that we don't get to really see her again.
Well, I was going to actually ask if, because there seems to be a very...
Kathika, sorry.
Oh, her name's Kathika. Cool. I think there's an emphasis on the fact that, you know, a lot of characters do get picked up as a companion.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, obviously you've got Rose, first of all, then Mickey gets offered to come along with them but declines. Then you've got Adam, who then turns out to be a mistake. Then you get Jack. Would you have liked it if Nancy had become a companion?
I think yes, but definitely not a long one, because I feel like she has her life looking after the children, so there probably will most likely become a point where it's like, show me the future and show us what life is like now that we've won, but I do need to go back to look after the kids. Yeah,
because I guess it's quite nice to see from her perspective that the fact that, you know, the war feels like it's never going to end. I'm going to link this back to, like, real life. Like, when the coronavirus, the pandemic, was at its height, when we were in, like, towards the end of 2020, start of 2021, sure, there were, like, mentions of possible vaccines, but it felt like it was going to go on forever.
Yeah.
It did. Like, you could not see the end, really. And I guess, you know, it would have been like that. I mean, even now, when you hear all these things about various governments overturning laws like Roe versus Wade at the moment, and our government, you know, not banning trans conversion therapy along with everything else, and they seem to also be willing to rewrite the Human Rights Act to make it less good, basically, less safe.
And it's kind of, it's the feeling of when these things do change, like they get changed, like reversed, so everything's okay again. It's kind of that realization of there's the possibility we are not going to see that in our lifetime.
Exactly, because, you know, our grandparents were fighting for these things.
Yeah. And
now we're possibly going to have to do the same. We shouldn't have to do that, because it should be a no-brainer that should stay the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it should, we should be looking towards inclusivity of everyone. and stuff. I don't know how we got onto this subject, honestly, but the point's still sad that, you know, we should be kind towards everyone else, just as the Doctor says, you know.
Everybody lives.
Yeah, well, no, I don't mean just in this episode, but I mean, you know, be kind, you know, never be cruel or cowardly and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of as well, like, I do need to rewatch, like, the old episodes.
Yeah.
As well. But it seems to become slightly prominent in this episode that Rose just really likes people randomly, like, will kind of not cling, but will be like, you're really attractive.
Yeah, she flirts very easily.
Yeah.
I mean, she does it with the Doctor, she does it with Adam, she does it with Jack, but the difference is that she is falling for the Doctor, whereas Jack, she's definitely just friends with. And Adam, I mean, she doesn't see him again after this, so...
What did you think about the graphics?
I thought it was pretty good. I liked the Blitz stuff. You know, I like the CGI, not the actual Blitz.
Gonna say, like,
obviously.
No, what I was gonna say is like that. There are some bits where you can like definitely tell that the planes are CGI.
Well, yeah, but I think the atmosphere and stuff, it goes well. I think it works well. It's definitely nowhere near as bad as the Slovene running through the corridor a couple of episodes ago. Like, that was so bad.
I've seen that clip so many times.
I like the mask CGI stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't as keen on the bombs being dropped. Like, one of them was good, like the main one at the end.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the overall when she was on the
Fair
blimp.
enough. Yeah, the blimp.
Yeah. I did like the lights though. You know, with the beam on Jack's ship.
See, I didn't really like that too much. I mean, when Rose was like sliding down, that was quite good. But when she was first held in there were some shots that were a bit ropey.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
I really liked the foreshadowing with the nanogenes. Like, the nanogene CGI was pretty good. But I liked how they, again, with Nancy and also the Tula warship, that throughout the whole thing they were foreshadowing that these three things were going to be the main solution / problem. We've also got the vortex manipulator. I mean, it's not used, but it's there. Which is, although, no, because he uses the ship teleport, not the vortex manipulator. Because I thought maybe that's how he got to the ship. No, it wasn't. Then you got the Doctor picking up the cat near the start. It's so cute. Because the 10th Doctor doesn't seem to like cats very much, whereas the 9th Doctor's like, ah.
I kind of thought of your cat.
Yeah, he does. He does look a bit like that. I think he's fluffier.
Yeah.
But yeah, my cat does look quite a bit.
I just kind of picked him up. I was like, see the stuff I have to do.
But also with the Doctor himself, you know, they have that talk at the start of Doctor Dances about dancing, which is obviously a metaphor for sex.
Yeah.
And I guess that Rose is literally sitting there, like, not being able to imagine the Doctor ever being able to have sex. Like,
I think a lot of the actors for Doctors, like Matt Smith and David and all that, have kind of stated that they couldn't see the Doctor being sexual, and kind of that's led to the Doctor as asexual.
Yeah, I think, personally, in my opinion, I've always had the Doctor as demisexual, so that that they don't have any sexual attraction towards anyone until they fall in love with the person. I feel like that works because with the Doctor a lot better. Like 10 and Rose, definitely there's a lot of sexual chemistry between the two. 11 and River, and 12 and River, same thing. Even 12 and Missy have that same thing. I'd argue that Missy is the one that's asexual between the two there. Yeah. Because, although I also would say that the Doctor's probably, I don't think she's sex repulsed, I think she's just asexual.
I do love the Doctor in this episode. The fact that as well, when Nancy is feeding all the kids, he just appears like, I'll take some food. It's like, how did you get here?
I swear he's such a Marxist, though. He even references it in the episode. And he references Oliver and all this other stuff. But he's so like, yeah, you you take this food from people that are hogging it over everyone else. And then there's there's a lot of gay jokes in this as well. Like,
so many.
I mean, not even just Jack, but like you've got
Nancy exposing like the
guy in the house, and how he's the one that's sleeping with the butcher, not his wife. And I love that. I did remember that from last time, but
I didn't pick that up. I was watching it and I was like reading along with the subtitles as well, and I was like, oh, wait.
Yeah. And then you've got the army officer, who's very much into Jack, but you know it wasn't unusual in the army for there to be a lot of gay people. I mean, there still isn't. I mean, you know, it happened everywhere, but the army especially, because a lot of them obviously didn't want to settle down with women because they weren't attracted to them. But the army was and the clergy were the two big things they could go into, if that makes sense.
Especially the Navy.
Yeah.
In the Navy. Bananas.
Yeah. You got the banana gun.
Wait, could that in itself be just an innuendo?
I think
theoretically.
There was a word there was a phrase that like Jack or someone said, and it was like, oh, like it was like I don't know, but it was obviously an innuendo to me. Yeah. Or it could have been interpreted.
There's been so many. Honestly, it's Jack. He says an innuendo every sentence. Like,
I think. Safe to say that if I start having nightmares about this episode again, I'm blaming you two.
Sorry for that. But there's that other moment to do with the Doctor where Rose is talking about Jack, and she's like, "Oh, we know men," when he gets all offended. And the Doctor's reaction to that, he's like partially offended, but he's also partially like, "Well, why am I offended by this?" Yeah. Because like, you've got that kind of reaction that, again, a lot of people headcanon the Doctor as non-binary.
I definitely think the Doctor's gender fluid.
I personally would go non-binary, but just chooses to use the pronouns that they currently are presenting as, if that makes sense. But yeah, gender fluid again, easily. Yeah. The one thing I love, again, we're going back and forth, back to the gay jokes and stuff. The interesting thing about this episode, I have mentioned this earlier with you guys over lunch, or maybe not with Jasmine, definitely with Loki, but that Russell has mentioned in the writer's tale that there was 3 writers that he never rewrites the episodes for. Stephen Moffat, Chris Chibnall, and one other who I can't remember the name of. Really need to look that up at some point. But so other than a vague outline of it's got to be a 2-parter and that you've probably got to include Jack as a character in a rough outline of how Jack's supposed to be, he didn't have any input on this episode. So all the gay jokes are Stephen Moffat's, not Russell's. Whereas in almost every other episode, it's almost guaranteed it's actually Russell who put those jokes in.
The T in Russell T Davies stands for trans, right?
I mean, the T actually isn't from anywhere. Like, Russell's full name is Stephen Russell Davies. So I have no idea where the T comes from. It's true, but not even his parents called him Stephen. Like, he was always known as Russell. So anyway,
maybe the T is just tea. Spill the tea, sis.
I think I definitely like the scenes in the hospital because it feels very tense, and like at the start of Dr. Dances, where he's like, I just sent them all to their room. And then they go up
and
to
then
the original room, and it's like, oh, I sent him to his room.
Yeah, I remembered that. Well, and maybe not the room bit, but I remembered the tape, and that stops before he says it. I remember that.
I still get
But also, I remember because I listened to this podcast called Escaping Cerberus, which is what gave me the idea to do this in the first place, where they rewatch and review episodes. I think they're up to Human Nature, Family of Blood at the moment, series 3, written by Paul Cornell, who wrote the last episode. But they mentioned how the way that the plot is written, it feels very much like a video game, in the sense that you go to one place you do something which leads you to another place, leads you to another
yeah.
place. And that's kind of why they liked it so much. Because not many other episodes have you going one place, going to another, and then going back to that place again, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I get that now.
Yeah.
Oh. And like the fact that when the Doctor's having a conversation with Dr. Constantine,
Yeah.
and he's like, well, they're all dead. They're not dead. And he like makes a noise and they all just sit up.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I forgot that happens. I knew they set up at some point. I didn't realise it was there.
Mm.
And then he just starts slowly turning. And it's like, oh, I get why it starts off with a cough now.
Yeah, but you can also, like, when the Doctor mentions the scars, and you can see his hand on the walking stick with
And
a
he
scar
kind
on
of moves
there.
it away.
Yeah.
But another intense scene is when Nancy's locked up.
I was so
Yeah.
scared for her. But then she starts singing a lullaby, which is another reference kind of to the fact that she is a mother.
Yes.
Because it's a...
Well, I think that's probably what... Well, I mean, it's not what the Doctor then suddenly realises, because it's a little bit later on, but that's probably helps him
Yeah.
suddenly realise it. Because, again, Moffat, he's very much... I think it's called... He uses this thing called an ex machina ending, I think it's called, which means that the plot goes on and on, and then it's suddenly wrapped up really quickly from things that happened in that scene that haven't been foreshadowed. Like, a lot of his episodes do that, but this
Yeah.
episode doesn't. This episode actually uses proper foreshadowing, which I prefer,
really
personally. Yeah, I think this series, why the episodes are generally pretty good, is because the stories are wrapped up so well.
Yeah.
And they also, not only do they do that, but I think maybe we'll talk about this more when we finally get on to Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways. But they actually slip in a lot of things that will be used later on, whether it's Bad Wolf, which I actually didn't spot a reference in this one. And I didn't last episode either, I don't think.
Oh, was there a reference?
There
in
should
this
be.
one?
There normally is a reference, even if it flashes up on screen really
'Cause-
quickly.
I know there's like a very big obvious one next episode.
Yes. I mean, they point it, the Doctor literally points it
Like,
out.
Hold on.
Yeah, yeah, I can't remember when the Bad Wolf reference is in this episode or the previous one, but there should be one in every episode from the end of the world onwards. There's normally, because I don't think there was one in Rose, but there is one in every other one since then.
I think God, it's very good. Like, this episode is great with kind of the unease and creepy aspect of it, especially in the scene where Nancy's found the kids like in the little hideaway,
Yeah,
and she just kind of turns around and says, "He's sitting next to you. Why is the typewriter still going off?"
yeah. It's so good because I forgot about that one
so did
again.
I.
I'd forgotten about that. Is the one that I've forgotten about.
It's I love how they do the paranormal this episode. It's so good.
Yeah, Moffat is so good at horror. He really is. Like, I know that it's Mark Gatiss that's the horror buff, but I think Stephen actually writes horror better, I would argue. Although The Unquite Dead is pretty creepy, to be fair.
And as well, and I don't know how I didn't notice it before, but when there's like a slight zoom in on the empty child, there is it looks like that there is literally nothing behind the eyes. It just looks like a wall behind the eyes that's like very misty. And I didn't notice that before, and I love that character design because it's literally empty.
Yeah. I guess the reason why Nancy kind of refers to him being empty is because the term zombie hadn't been coined at that point.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you had undead creatures like Frankenstein and things like that, and vampires, but the term zombie, I think, properly started being a thing in the 20th century when zombie
definitely.
movies started popping up.
Near the end of the episode, where he kind of turns to Rose and is like, "Oh, by the way, I've got moves, and then just sends out the nano genes. I love that scene so much. And then also the scene when Nancy hugs the child.
With Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie. It's just such a really nice scene, and it made me tear up a bit again.
Yeah, because I remember looking up the IMDb page about a year or so ago when I was listening to the Escaping Cerberus equivalent of this episode. And I don't think the actor who's played Nancy has done any acting since then. I mean, she did a bit in EastEnders for a while as a small character, not one of the regulars. But she hasn't, as far as I can remember, done very much, if anything, since then. But she is great.
Yeah, it's good. She's really good. And then obviously at the end, the Doctor starts dancing.
Yeah.
I guess a final thought is just like it's a creepy episode, but it's also got that sense of like beauty to it.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's a very beautiful ending.
Yeah, it ends on an optimistic note, and I mean, as Stephen has literally said in that episode through the Doctor, there's justice once everybody lives, because he's notorious for killing off characters, then reviving them, then killing them off, then reviving them.
Very Supernatural-esque.
Literally.
But I also love that scene between Nancy and Rose, where it's like, you're from the future, but you don't sound German. It's like, that's because we win.
I know. It's great. It's things like that you don't, we don't get that as much.
Yeah.
Like people from the past. That's why I think a lot of people have really wanted a companion be from the past.
Yeah.
Because almost all of them have been from present, with a couple like Jack being from the future, but none of them have been from the past. A lot of people have said that they really wished that the Clara from The Snowman had survived instead and had been the main Clara, not the present day one. And I do agree with that sentiment. It'd be really cool to see a Victorian or Edwardian or Tudor companion.
And just kind of
around.
Seeing, like, I mean, obviously you need a good actor anyways, but I feel like you need quite a good actor to capture that awe of, like, being from this really old era and seeing what the future is in kind of that starstruckness. But
also, it would equally be just as funny if they were all awed over things that we see as very mundane, like a pen or something. Whereas, you show them a massive computer and they're like, you know.
Like, oh, yeah.
Exactly. But is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, what would you rate this episode? Or this two-parter, I should say.
Together?
Yeah.
Probably a 10 out of 10.
Okay, fair enough.
For me, it'll be a 7 out of 10.
I went for an 8 out of 10. I do really love the horror and how suspenseful it is and the use of foreshadowing.
I just have a really soft spot for this episode.
Yeah.
Which is very weird, seeing as how it's the only episode I'm scared of.
Cool. Well, that's all we've got time for today. Hope you'll join us next time when we review Boomtown, one of my favourite episodes of this season. I think is criminally underrated. And we'll see you then.